In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to calculate 95% confidence intervals. Now, what I have here are the steps associated with the 68% confidence intervals. And the reason I have the same steps as I had in the 68% is that the steps are exactly the same for the 95% confidence interval case. There's one exception, and that's in relation to the t-value that we're going to get from the t-distribution through the Excel function. So the steps are exactly the same, except for identifying the t-value from the t-distribution will be a little bit different. So let's go to step 1, which is really easy. Calculating the mean and the standard deviation. Again, as was the case with 68% confidence intervals, I'm going to assume that you know how to calculate a mean and a standard deviation. I covered that topic in Chapter 2 if you want a refresher on that. So the mean in this case was 7.6 hours of sleep, and the standard deviation is 1.67. The standard error of the mean calculation for 95% confidence intervals is exactly the same as the 68% confidence intervals. So it's the standard deviation divided by the square root of 5, and that gives 0.75 for the standard error of the mean. Degrees of freedom, exactly the same, n minus 1. In this case, that's a value of 4. And then we get to the different element associated with the calculation of the 95% confidence interval. And the key difference here is that the value included in the parentheses is 0.05 now, instead of the value of 0.32 that I used in the 68% confidence interval. So in this case, I've subtracted 0.95 from 1, and that gives 0.05. And that 0.05 is basically saying 5% of the t-distribution is what we're trying to call here. And this 2t element is saying that spread it across the two tails of the t-distribution, both the low end and the high end. So to get the value, this needs to be inputted into Excel. You can also use Google Sheets. I believe will give you exactly the same results with the same function. So I've typed in t.inv.t2 0.05 for my level of probability and 4 for the degrees of freedom. And that gives me a value of 2.776. So this is much larger than the t-value that was obtained from the 68% confidence interval calculation. From memory, that was 1.13. So in order to get greater confidence, we need to push out toward the ends of the tails of the t-distribution, and that t-value that corresponds to the 95% confidence, it corresponds to a t-value of 2.776. So that is actually going to be used as part of the multiplication. 2.78, so I just rounded to 2 decimal places, times 0.75 equals 2.09. So that's my multiplier, or the product associated with this multiplication. And now that we've completed that step, all that's left to do is add and subtract from the sample mean that product that I got from multiplying the standard error of the mean by the t-value that corresponds to 95% of the distribution in the t-distribution. And that gives me 7.60 minus 2.09, 5.51 as my lower bound 95% confidence interval, and 9.69 for the upper bound confidence interval. So those are the steps involved with calculating a 95% confidence interval. Same process as the 68% confidence. The one exception is that your Excel t function has to be manipulated slightly differently with the 0.05.